We'll start with a new chapter today. Amendment power of Parliament or amendment to Indian Constitution. Okay. So far we have kept discussing about amendments to Indian Constitution, various amendments, 24th, 42nd, 1st, 4th, 17th, right? So what are these amendments? What is the procedure to amend Indian Constitution is what we are going to discuss today. Now the article which deals with amendment power, which is also called as constituent power. Constituent power is nothing but amendment power of Indian Parliament. Okay. Now this power arises from Article 368. Which is in part 20 of Indian Constitution. Article 368 talks about the power or the authority of Parliament to amend the Constitution and the procedure which the Parliament has to follow. Article 368, very important article, you have to remember this. Okay. Now, first let's try to understand the meaning of amendment. What is an amendment? Yes, change. Amendment is nothing but changing Indian Constitution. It can be an article, it can be a clause, it can be a subclause, or it can even be a word, a single word. For example, the word compensation. Even if you change a word in the Constitution, that will be considered as an amendment to Indian Constitution. Okay, so that is the meaning of amendment. Now your Article 368 says that Indian Parliament has the authority to change or repeal or modify any provision in the Constitution. Okay, your Article 368 says that Indian Parliament has the authority to change or modify or repeal or add any provision to the Constitution. Okay. Now we have already discussed in salient features of Indian Constitution that Indian Constitution is neither rigid nor flexible, right? It is neither too rigid as the Constitution of United States nor too flexible as the Constitution of United Kingdom. Okay. Now why did we come to this conclusion that it is neither too rigid nor too flexible?
There are certain changes that can be made to the Constitution.
Yes.
There are also certain changes that cannot be made.
Yes. See, the level of restrictions or the intensity of restrictions on the amendment power of Parliament is not as easy as United Kingdom. United Kingdom does not even have a written constitution, and the constitution can be changed by the Parliament of UK just as an ordinary bill. It can pass a constitutional amendment bill following the same procedure that they follow for an ordinary bill. This is the situation in United Kingdom. Whereas in United States, changing or amending the constitution is very difficult. They have to convene a separate constituent assembly. Regular houses of legislature cannot pass constitutional amendment bills. A separate constituent assembly has to be convened if they want to change the constitution. And for every change in the constitution, they must get the approval of states also. Okay, so the procedure is quite difficult in United States, whereas it is very easy in United Kingdom. India lies somewhere in between. Okay, for certain provisions or changing certain provisions in the constitution is very easy. It only requires simple majority. We will see what this simple majority and special majority is today. But changing certain provisions in the constitution only requires simple majority, whereas changing federal provisions in the constitution requires special majority and ratification by state legislatures, right? So depending on the provision that you would like to change in the constitution, there is a separate procedure that you have to follow for all this. Different types of majorities. Okay, for certain provisions changing it is very easy, for certain provisions it is very difficult, which is why we say that Indian constitution is neither too rigid nor too flexible. Okay, understood so far? Okay, now if you want to make any change in the constitution or if you want to amend the constitution, you have to pass what is called as a constitutional amendment bill. A constitutional amendment bill has to be passed in parliament and has to receive the assent of president before you can actually change the constitution. Okay, now there are different types of bills. We will discuss about this in the chapter of parliament, but here what you have to note is there are different types of bills that you can pass in parliament. It can be an ordinary bill, it can be a constitutional amendment bill, it can be a financial bill, it can be a money bill. Okay, what exactly is the meaning of this we will discuss in the chapter of parliament. But here what you have to note is, if you want to change any provision in the constitution, you have to pass what is called as a constitutional amendment bill. Okay, now why did we use the word bill here? Yes, we are only at the stage of proposal. Okay, only a proposal has been made in the parliament to change the constitution. Once the parliament passes this bill and once the president signs on this bill, then it will become an act. A bill is nothing but a proposal. Once it has been duly passed by the parliament and once it receives the signature of president, then it will become an act. Any bill for that matter. For a bill to become an act, it has to be passed by parliament or state legislature and it has to ultimately receive the signature of president or governor. Only then a bill will become an act. Okay, so bill here is only a proposal. A proposal to change the constitution. Right. Now the procedure to pass constitutional amendment bills has been described in Article 368. How do you exactly pass this bill in the parliament is what has been described in your Article 368. Okay. Now the first point to note here is that constitutional amendment bills can be introduced in either houses of parliament. Either house of parliament. How many houses does parliament have? Two houses, lower house and upper house, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So this constitutional amendment bill can be introduced. First it has to be introduced by someone, right? The bill has to be introduced in the parliament. Now this introduction of the bill can be done in either house of parliament, that is either in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Now why is this point important? It is important because certain types of bills can be introduced only in Lok Sabha. Certain types of bills can be introduced only in Rajya Sabha. Whereas certain types of bills can be introduced either in Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha. In due course of time, you will know what are the types of bills which have to be introduced only in Lok Sabha. For example, your money bill, anything which has to do with financial matters can be introduced only in lower house, that is Lok Sabha. Okay, and if you want to add a new all India service like your IAS, IPS and Indian Forest Service, if you want to create a new all India service, that bill to create a new All India service can be introduced only in Rajya Sabha. But here constitutional amendment bills can be introduced either in Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha. There are no restrictions with respect to introduction of constitutional amendment bills. Okay. Generally, prelims questions will come from these features. You will be given 2 or 3 statements about constitutional amendment bills and you will be asked to mark or find out which statements are true or false. Okay, for example, they will give a statement that constitutional amendment bills can only be introduced in Lok Sabha. And they will give 2 or 3 other statements. Okay, now the second feature. Constitutional amendment bills can be introduced either by a private member or by a minister. A constitutional amendment bill can be introduced either by a private member or by a minister. Now, who is this private member? Yes. In both the houses of parliament, every member who is part of parliament will be called as a member of parliament, right? Out of these members of parliament, certain people will be called as ministers and every other person will be called as a private member. Okay? There are 100 people in Lok Sabha. All these 100 people will be called as members of parliament. Out of these 100 people, let's say some 5 people have become ministers. Okay, remaining 95 will be called as private members. Even if some of them belong to the ruling party, if they are not a minister, they will be called as a private member.
Except minister or every other?
Yes, every other person will be called as a private member.
And even the speaker?
Speaker is a different constitutional authority. Even though he is a member of parliament, as soon as he becomes a speaker, he is a different constitutional authority. He does not participate in the regular parliamentary proceedings, voting and all this. He doesn't participate in it. Only when the votes are tied, the speaker votes. He does not participate in the discussions or debates about the bills also. Okay, so it can be introduced either by a private member or by a minister. It doesn't have to be introduced only by the government or by the minister. Again, you will see that certain types of bills can be introduced only by ministers. Example is your money bill. Money bill or financial bills can be introduced only by a minister, not by a private member. Whereas constitutional amendment bills can be introduced either by a private member or by a minister. Now the third feature of this bill is that it does not require prior recommendation of the president to be introduced in parliament. Okay, so there are certain types of bills where even before introducing them in the parliament, you have to take permission of the president to introduce those bills in parliament. Okay, so what happens in those cases is that first the government approaches the president. It will take the permission of president for introduction of bill in the parliament. Okay, once the president gives permission, then the bill is introduced in parliament in either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, and once the bill has been passed by parliament, it will again go to the president for his signature. Okay, so for certain types of bills this procedure is followed, but for constitutional amendment bills this procedure need not be followed. Prior permission or recommendation of president is not necessary. Constitutional amendment bills can be directly introduced in the parliament. They do not require prior recommendation or permission of the president. Okay, clear so far? Next. Once the bill has been introduced in the house, so we are at the stage of introduction, right? It can be either introduced by minister or a private member, does not require prior permission or recommendation of the president, and the bill has been introduced in, let's say, Lok Sabha. In both the houses, amendment under Article 368 requires special majority. It requires special majority. That is, you have to pass the bill with special majority both in Lok Sabha and in Rajya Sabha. Once you have introduced the bill in Lok Sabha, it has to be passed by special majority. Once the Lok Sabha passes the bill, it will go to Rajya Sabha, and the Rajya Sabha also has to pass the bill with special majority. What exactly is this special majority? We will discuss in a while. Okay, amendments under Article 368 require special majority. Amendments under Article 368 require special majority. The reason why I am stressing the word under Article 368 is that the Constitution need not be amended only under Article 368. There are other provisions to amend the Constitution also. There are other provisions in the Constitution to amend or change the provisions of Constitution. Article 368 is not the only way. But under Article 368, if you want to change or amend the Constitution, you require special majority. Okay, and another feature of constitutional amendment bills is that they have to be passed separately. Constitutional amendment bills have to be passed separately in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. There is no provision for joint sitting. There is no provision for joint sitting. Constitutional amendment bills have to be passed separately in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Now, what is this joint sitting? This generally happens in case of ordinary bills. Suppose there is a deadlock between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha wants something, but Rajya Sabha is not agreeing to it, or vice versa. Okay, so when there is this deadlock between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, President will convene for a joint sitting. Joint sitting in the sense, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, everyone will sit together and discuss on the bill and vote on the bill. Okay, but that is not possible in case of constitutional amendment bills. You have to pass this constitutional amendment bill separately. And in case there is a deadlock, what will happen then? The bill will simply end there. It will never become an act. Notice the difference. When there is a deadlock in cases of ordinary bills, when there is a deadlock, a joint sitting is convened. Okay, and if the bill can be passed in the joint sitting, it will go to the President for his signature. Okay. This is in case of ordinary bills. But what happens with constitutional amendment bills is that when there is a deadlock, that is when Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha don't agree with each other, then there is no provision for joint sitting and the constitutional amendment bill ends there. Okay, the constitutional amendment bill ends when there is a deadlock between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Okay, so once it ends, once the constitutional amendment bill ends, it cannot be sent to the president. Only when the bill is passed by both houses of parliament, you can send a bill to the president.
Ma'am, later again we introduce it.
Again you introduce, that is completely fine. But ultimately Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha both have to agree to a constitutional amendment bill. If you can introduce it again and get the support of the house which is not agreeing with you, then that is fine. Then you pass the bill and send it to the president. But if both houses don't agree with each other, you can never pass a constitutional amendment bill. Is it clear so far? Yes? Okay. Now the next feature of constitutional amendment bills is that they can be introduced only in parliament. In India, state legislatures do not have the power to amend the constitution. Only parliament has the power to amend or change the constitution. So constitutional amendment bills can be introduced only in parliament, not in state legislatures. Okay, now once the bill has been duly passed by parliament with special majority, then the bill will be presented to or placed in front of the president for his assent. Now what I have noticed when I was correcting your papers is that many of you are using informal phrases in your answer. Please avoid using that. Okay. For example, when I say that you require assent of the president, don't write in your paper that you require approval of president. Okay. Yes, they are synonyms, but in polity we use certain phrases. So stick to those phrases. Okay, and many of you are also using hypothetical examples. I can do it in the class to better explain a topic to you, but don't use hypothetical examples in your answers. Okay, only use recent examples or current affairs to substantiate your answer. Don't use hypothetical examples. Okay. Now, once the bill has been presented to the president and receives his assent, then a constitutional bill will become an act. Okay. And one small change was made by 24th Constitutional Amendment Act. It has made it binding on the president to give his assent to constitutional amendment bills. That is, Once a constitutional amendment bill has been presented to the President, he has no option but to give his assent. He cannot reject or send the bill back for reconsideration. He must give his assent to constitutional amendment bills. Okay. So generally when a bill is presented to President after it has been passed by Parliament, he generally has three options. First is he gives his assent. Okay. Second is he can reject the bill. That is, he can refuse to sign. Okay. When a President rejects a bill, then it will not become an act. Only when a bill gets the assent of President, a bill will become an act. But when the President rejects a bill, that is when he refuses to sign, then the bill will not become an act. Okay? Only in cases of constitutional amendment bills, an obligation has been imposed on the President that he must give his assent to constitutional amendment bills. The other two options which are available, that is rejection of a bill or sending it back for reconsideration, is not available for constitutional amendment bills. So what is this sending it back for reconsideration? Generally, if the President does not like the provisions of the bill, if he feels that some of the provisions are unconstitutional, he can send the bill back to Parliament. He can send the bill back to Parliament for its reconsideration. So the Parliament will have to discuss the bill again and pass it again and then send it to President. That is the meaning of sending the bill back for reconsideration. So there are three options. First option is President gives his assent. Second option is President rejects. Third option is President sends the bill back for reconsideration of Parliament. So in cases of constitutional amendment bills, only the first option is available, that is he must give his assent to constitutional amendment bills. He cannot reject them, neither can he send it back for reconsideration of Parliament. He must give his assent. There is no other option available to him. This change was brought by 24th Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay. Now once the bill receives the assent of President, you will have a Constitutional Amendment Act. these are different types of majorities that you have in your constitution. So when you come across any type of majority, try to place it in one of these categories. What is the present strength of Lok Sabha? 545. Total 545 seats are available which can be filled through Lok Sabha elections. Okay, so the total strength of Lok Sabha is now 545. Now, out of these 545 seats, some seats may be vacant. Right? For example, someone has died. Some MP has died. Then the seat will become vacant till elections are conducted again. Okay, so some seats may be vacant out of this 545. Okay, now on a particular day, some members may be present, some members may be absent. Okay, if you go, have you ever been to Parliament? You've been to Parliament? No? There is a provision. You can go and sit in the proceedings of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Okay, did I tell you this story? Last time when I went to Parliament, I had to remove, or everyone has to remove their chappal. Sorry, everyone should not remove their chappal. Once you sit in the Parliament, if you just remove your chappal to sit in the chair, some guard will come to you and throw you out. Okay, you should not remove chappal because they fear that you'll throw your chappal down. There is a rule that you should not remove your chappal. Okay, so there will be a gallery. All the members of Parliament will be sitting downstairs and there will be a gallery for the visitors. You can go and sit and watch the proceedings of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, but you should not remove your chappal. Okay, now when you go and sit in these proceedings, you will find that half of the people are not present. Half of the people will be chit-chatting with each other. Even if they are present in Lok Sabha, they will be chit-chatting with each other, calling each other names, Pappu or this or that. Okay, hardly you will find the serious conversations in Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha for that matter. Right? So some people in Lok Sabha, they may be present and some people may be absent, especially afternoons. After eating, they don't want to come and sit in Lok Sabha. Okay, now for example, once a bill has been introduced, enough debate has happened, now you have to vote on the bill, right? When voting happens, some people will volunteer to vote, but some people may abstain from voting. Abstain in the sense they will not participate in the voting process itself. Okay, if you are voting, you can either vote yes or no. But some people don't even participate in the voting process, they will simply abstain from voting. Okay, so these are all different possibilities that you have. Some seats may be vacant, some people may be present, some people may be absent, some may participate in the voting process, some may abstain from voting. Okay, these are all combinations which are available to you. Now let us try to understand different majorities with this. What is simple majority? Okay, simple majority is 50% plus 1 of what? 50% plus 1 of those who are present and voting. 50% plus 1 of those who are present and voting. Okay, so you will only do, out of this 545, which is the total strength of Lok Sabha, to calculate this 50% plus 1, you will only use those who are present and those who are participating in the voting process. You will exclude any vacant seats. You will also exclude those who are absent and also those who are abstaining from voting. Is it clear? This is simple majority. 50% plus 1 of those who are present and voting. Okay, if someone is present and they are abstaining from voting, you will not count them. Okay, since we have not used the word or here, we have used the word and. Okay, you will only count those who are present and voting. Okay, now what is absolute majority? Absolute majority is majority of total strength of the house. Majority of total strength of the house. What is the total strength of Lok Sabha? Right, 545. This is absolute majority. Okay, you will count everything, you will count vacancies, absent, abstaining, all this does not matter. The total strength of Lok Sabha is 545. So, absolute majority is majority of total strength of the house. Majority of total strength of the house. Okay, now where is it used, absolute majority? Can you think of instances where absolute majority is used? No. After elections, to determine who gets to form government, absolute majority is used. Only a party or a coalition which gets absolute majority will be invited to form the government. Okay, even in your state elections or in national elections, you keep seeing these numbers, right, in various news channels when election results are being announced. You see a lot of numbers, BJP these many seats, Congress these many seats, and they'll also give you one magic number which has to be reached. What is that magic number? It is absolute majority, that is 50% of total strength of the house plus 1. If a party reaches this majority, then it can form the government. Okay, if there are only 100 seats in your state legislative assembly, it is 50% of 100 plus 1. That is the number which a party has to get to form the government.
How does it work in organization?
You will take the nearest value, no? Whether it is under 5 or over 5, the decimal point is. Don't see mathematics in polity, okay? Next is effective majority. Effective majority is, first you subtract total strength of the house to take out or you take away vacancies from the total strength of the house. Okay. Now 50% of this plus 1 is your effective majority. Following? So far? Clear? Now, generally in your polity book, what you would notice is that the words absolute majority and effective majority are used interchangeably. Okay? So, don't get confused. If in the exam, both absolute majority and effective majority are given in the options, then you have to be careful. Otherwise, you can use absolute majority in the place of effective majority. Okay, don't get confused in the exam if the word effective majority is not given. If absolute majority is given in the option and not effective majority, go for absolute majority. Okay, only when both the options are given, you have to be careful. Right, I'll tell you. Effective majority is used for removal of vice president. Vice president is the chairman of Rajya Sabha, right? So generally with parliamentary authorities, that is speaker of Lok Sabha, chairman of Rajya Sabha, speaker of state legislative assembly and chairman of state legislative council and deputy chairmans. If you have to remove them, then you need effective majority. Vice President, Speaker or Deputy Speaker. Vice President of Rajya Sabha, Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Speaker of Lok Sabha, Deputy Speaker of Lok Sabha. Speaker of State Legislative Assembly and Deputy Speaker of State Legislative Assembly. Chairman of State Legislative Council and Deputy Chairman of State Legislative Council. Don't worry, I'll give you a Xerox today. All these lists are given in that paper. Okay, you don't have to write it down now. Okay, next type of majority is the majority under Article 249 and under Article 312. Okay. Now, Article 249 is about the authority of Parliament to legislate on matters in state list. I told you that Parliament has the authority to make laws only on matters in union list, right? But there are certain exceptions when Parliament can make laws even on matters in state list. And one of the exception is your Article 249, under which if Rajya Sabha gives approval, then Parliament can legislate on a matter in state list. But you require approval of Rajya Sabha for it. Okay, if Rajya Sabha feels that in national interest on this particular matter only Parliament has to legislate, then only the Parliament will get the authority to make a law on that matter. Okay, this will be elaborated upon in your center-state relations chapter. Even if you don't understand now, just try to understand the majority under this. What exactly are Article 249 and 312 will be discussed in center-state relations chapter. Okay. Now Article 312 is about creation of new All India services. Again, for which you require approval of Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha has to create a new All India service. Now the type of majority which is required under these articles is two-thirds majority of those who are present and voting. Two-thirds majority of those who are present and voting. Okay, so the majority that you get for these type of bills should not be less than two-thirds of those who are present and voting. Should not be less than. Is it clear so far? Okay, next is majority under Article 61. Article 61 deals with impeachment of president. It deals with impeachment of president. Impeachment is nothing but removal. But we don't use the word removal in polity, we use the word impeachment. For constitutional authorities, we use the word impeachment. Okay. Now, under Article 61, the type of majority that you have is two-thirds of total strength of the House. Two-thirds of total strength of the House. Okay. So, the number or the votes that you have to get should not be less than two-thirds of total strength of the House. Should not be less than two-thirds of total strength of the House. Lok Sabha's total strength is 545. So, it is two-thirds of 545. You should either get two-thirds of 545 or more. But it should not be less than two-thirds of 545. Next is your majorities under Article 368. Now these are special majorities. Under Article 368, you have two types of special majorities. First one is majority of total membership of the House, majority of total membership of the House plus two-thirds of those who are present and voting. Majority of total membership of the House and two-thirds of those who are present and voting. Both these conditions have to be satisfied. The first condition is getting majority of total membership of the House. That is nothing but your absolute majority. Okay. First is majority of total membership of the house. Okay, so what is this majority of total membership in Lok Sabha? This is 50% of 545 plus 1. Right? That is the meaning of majority of total membership of the house. And the second condition which has to be satisfied is 2/3 of those who are present and voting. Okay, both these conditions have to be satisfied together. Even if one condition does not satisfy, then you will not get special majority. Then finally, the second type of special majority under Article 368 is majority of total membership of the house and 2/3 of those who are present and voting is one condition. Second is ratification by state legislatures. Ratification by half of state legislatures. Ratification by half of state legislatures. Along with these two conditions, the third condition which has to be satisfied is ratification by at least half of state legislatures. That is, half of the states in India and their state legislatures will have to agree to that particular bill. Okay, these are two different types of special majorities under Article 368. 50% of total membership of the House plus 2/3 of those present and voting is one type of special majority. Second type is these two conditions plus ratification by half of state legislatures. That is, if there are 20 states in India, 10 states will have to agree. 10 state legislatures will have to agree to that bill. Agreeing is nothing but passing the bill with simple majority. That is, in state legislatures, the bill has to be again passed with simple majority. Then you will say that that particular state legislature has ratified the bill. So in parliament you will have special majority, but the same bill in state legislatures has to be passed only with simple majority. See, in Lok Sabha, when proceedings of Lok Sabha are happening, if let us say 545 is the total strength of Lok Sabha, that is the number of seats which have to be filled in Lok Sabha are 545. Out of these 545, some seats may be lying vacant because some members have resigned or some members have died while in office, right? These are all vacant seats. And when proceedings of Lok Sabha are happening, some people may be present. Out of these 540 people, let's say, 5 are vacant seats. 540 people have been elected. But on that particular day, only 200 people have come to Lok Sabha. Right? They are members who are present. Okay? Now, out of these 200 people also, when voting is happening, only 150 people are participating in the voting process. Remaining 50 are abstaining from voting. That is, they are neither voting yes nor voting no. They are simply abstaining or staying out of the voting process. Right? So this 150 will become those who are present and voting.
So when we consider the last statement, it says majority of the total membership plus 2/3.
Yes.
Isn't it like we are
No, not necessarily. Just because one condition is satisfied, the second need not be satisfied. Okay, for example, there are only 200 people who are present in voting, right? 2/3 of 200 is something, right? But majority of total membership of the house is 50% of 545 plus 1, which is obviously more than 2/3 of 200. Okay, so both the conditions have to be satisfied together. Is it clear so far? Now, this first majority, that is majority of total membership and 2/3 present in voting, under Article 368, it is applicable to constitutional amendment bills. Right? For certain type of constitutional amendment bills, you require this first type of special majority. For some other types of constitutional amendment bills, you require the second type of special majority. Okay? But the same first type of special majority is applicable to other areas also, not only constitutional amendment bills. You can use this special majority, or Constitution has used this special majority in other areas as well. For example, removal of Chief Election Commissioner. It's not a constitutional amendment bill, but even there, this type of special majority has been used. Giving approval to national emergency. Is this a constitutional amendment bill? Giving approval to national emergency? When national emergency has to be imposed, it has to receive approval of Parliament. Right? But this approval of national emergency is not a constitutional amendment bill. You are not changing anything in the Constitution. Right? Now, even for approval of national emergency, this type of special majority, that is majority of total membership of the House plus 2/3 of those present in voting, this special majority is used. Okay, to summarize, if you want to change Constitution, for constitutional amendment bills, you generally use three types of majorities. First type of majority is simple majority, second type is special majority, third type is special majority plus ratification by half of state legislatures. These are the only three majorities that you use for constitutional amendment bills. Simple majority and two different majorities under Article 368. Depending on the provision that you want to change in the Constitution, either this type of majority applies or these two. We have already discussed this when we are discussing this feature of Constitution, that our Constitution is neither too rigid nor too flexible. It is not rigid because some provisions can be changed only with simple majority. It is not too flexible also because changing certain provisions requires special majority. Okay, so what are these provisions for which only simple majority is required? What are the provisions for which first type of special majority is required? And what are the provisions for which special majority and ratification both are required? You have to by heart this list. Okay, generally ratification by state legislatures is required, or this type of majority is used when you are trying to change federal provisions of Indian Constitution. So the list given in your Lakshmikant, under this majority, that is the last majority, special majority plus ratification by state legislatures, this type of majority is used Generally, when you are trying to change federal provisions of the constitution, that is, for example, you are trying to change the powers of states, or you are trying to expand the powers of parliament, or you are trying to change the powers of Supreme Court and High Court, or you are trying to change Article 368 itself. For all these instances, you require ratification of state legislatures along with special majority.
For the first type of special majority, you said that majority of total membership of House. What type of majority that we speaking about?
Absolute majority. Majority of total membership of the House, in the sense 50% of total membership of the House plus 1. What is total membership of Lok Sabha? 545. So 50% of 545 plus 1.
It doesn't matter if they're not present absolutely.
No, does not matter. When you use the word or phrase total membership of the House or total strength of the House, then it means you are also including vacant, present, absent, voting, abstaining, everyone. Right.
We are trying to change federal features.
Yeah, federal features or federal provisions in the constitution. For example, union list and state list, part of 7th schedule, right? So it clearly tells what are the powers of parliament, what are the powers of state legislatures, right? Now if you want to change these federal features by taking one matter from state list and you want to put it in union list, so you are changing the powers of state legislatures, for which you require ratification by state legislatures also. That is the last type of special majority. Okay, but if you are trying to change fundamental rights or directive principles, you require the first type of special majority. Okay. Yes, fundamental rights are important, directive principles are important, but they are not affecting the rights of states. Yes or no? They are affecting the rights of individuals. So we don't go for this last type, we go for the first type of special majority. Okay, and there are some features in the constitution which can be changed with simple majority. Simple majority in the sense 50% of those who are present and voting plus 1. Okay, this is very easy to obtain. Yes or no? Special majority is very difficult to obtain, but simple majority is very easy to obtain. And there are certain features in the constitution which can be changed with simple majority also. For example, changing the boundaries of states or changing the names of states, making changes to 2nd schedule, that is salaries, emoluments of president and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, if you are changing the constitution with simple majority, those changes will not be considered as amendments. Please remember, if you are changing any provision in the constitution with simple majority, then it does not fall under the definition of amendment under Article 368. You will not call it as amendment. Yes, you are changing the constitution, but it will not be called as amendment to Indian constitution. Any provision in the constitution that you are changing with simple majority will not be considered as amendment under Article 368. Clear so far? So if you want to amend the constitution under Article 368, there are only two types of majorities which are possible. What are they? Yes, first type of special majority, second type of special majority. Yes. So amendments under Article 368 fall under only two types of majorities. First is special majority, second is special majority plus ratification of state legislatures. If any provision requires only simple majority, then changing that provision will not fall under the definition of amendment under Article 368.
Now, is it like to consider the second statement legislation has to consider first one as well? I mean, ratification of states. So, is that alone enough, or do they need to consider majority of voting conditions as well? When
All three conditions have to be satisfied. What is the first condition? Majority of total membership of the House. Second condition, 2/3 of those present and voting. Third condition, ratification by state legislatures. All three conditions have to be satisfied.
for it to be called for amending.
For amending federal features of Indian Constitution, these three conditions have to be satisfied. To call it an amendment, either first type of special majority or second type of special majority would suffice. Where is all this written? It is all written in the Constitution only. I am not creating anything here. For it is clearly mentioned in the Constitution what is the type of majority that you have to use for different provisions or different features. The Constitution itself will tell you that for these features you have to use this majority, for these features you have to use this majority. Okay, so here what you have to note is, we have not just discussed about constitutional amendment bills. We have discussed about various other provisions also and different types of majorities required for them. Election of president. Election of president or removal of president is not a constitutional amendment bill. Right? But you require certain type of majority for it. What is that? Majority under Article 61. Okay. So for everything in the Constitution you require certain type of majority. For electing speaker, for electing deputy speaker, for electing vice president, for electing president, for removing Supreme Court judges, for removing High Court judges, for for removing chief election commissioners, for removing UPSC members. For all these different type of majorities are required. And you have to remember what type of majority is for what. In many cases you use this. In many cases you use the first type of special majority. Not just for constitutional amendment bills, there are a lot of areas where you use special majority. Wherever you hear or see the word special majority, the meaning is this. Wherever you see the word special majority in your Lakshmikant book, this is the meaning. When second type of special majority has to be described in the book, what will be given is special majority plus ratification of half of state legislatures. Both these phrases will be given together. When only special majority is used, what they mean is first type of special majority. Is it clear? Okay. So the word simple majority is used as it is. Even in your Lakshmikant book, you will find the word simple majority. The meaning is this. For absolute majority, the meaning is this. But sometimes in your Lakshmikant book, absolute and effective are used interchangeably. So don't get confused. Okay. Absolute majority is generally used only. The only case where absolute majority is used is to determine which party has to form government. Okay. Effective majority is used in case of presiding officers, speaker, deputy speaker, president, vice president or chairman, deputy chairman. In these cases, effective majority is used, but in your Lakshmikant, the word used is absolute majority. That is completely fine. If you just assume that vacancies are 0, absolute and effective majority are equal. Yes or no? Right? So yes, they can be used interchangeably, don't get confused. Clear so far? Any doubts? So after the class, take Xerox from Sana. There will be a list which you will have to by heart. Okay. Now finally, one small subtopic is left. Let's compare the constituent powers of Indian Parliament and US legislature. How are constitutional amendments made in India and how are constitutional amendments made in United States? In your mains examination, you will be asked comparisons between different constitutions. Indian Constitution, United Kingdom's Constitution, US Constitution, mainly these three. Okay, there is no separate chapter in Lakshmikant which will have everything summarized together about differences. In different topics it will be given. For example, in your amendment topic, the differences in amendment power in US and in India, they have been elaborated upon, right? So under respective topics, you will find differences between India, UK and United States. They will not ask you about Brazil or Sri Lanka, all this is not important. Only three countries, India, UK, US. The first difference is that in India, the Parliament of India has been given the constituent power or the power to amend the constitution. Okay, the Parliament itself has this power. But in United States, there is a separate constituent assembly which is convened to change constitution. US legislature cannot change the Constitution of United States. A separate body is convened. The separate body called Constituent Assembly is convened to amend US Constitution. That is the first difference. The second difference is, in India, only Parliament has the authority to amend the Constitution. Only Parliament has the authority to amend the Constitution. If you want to introduce a constitutional amendment bill, you can only introduce it in Parliament, not in state legislatures. Okay, so state legislatures cannot initiate amendments to Indian Constitution. That is, they cannot start the process of amending Indian Constitution. Whereas in United States, even states have been given the power to initiate amendments to US Constitution. That is, states can put up a proposal, and if that state can gather the support of other states and US Constituent Assembly, then Constitution of US can be changed. Whereas in India, state legislatures do not have the power to initiate, let alone pass. They cannot even initiate the process of amendment. Only Parliament can do it, only members of Parliament can do it. Whereas in US, even the states have the power to initiate amendments to US Constitution. That is, they can put up a proposal, gather support of other states. In India, that is not possible. Next difference is that in majority of cases, amendment to constitution requires only special majority or simple majority. It does not require ratification by state legislatures. Only in very few cases ratification of state legislatures is required. Okay, but in US, for every change or for every amendment, you require ratification by 3/4 of state legislatures. 3/4 of state legislatures will have to agree to your amendment, every amendment to US Constitution. Whereas in India, only very few amendments require ratification, and even that ratification is by only half of state legislatures. State legislatures. Okay, so these are three major differences between constituent power or procedure to amend constitution in US and in India. So you can see more of a federal tilt in United States. States have been given more power to amend the constitution in US, unlike India, where Parliament has almost a monopoly over amendments to Indian constitution. States do not have any power to amend the constitution except in one single case, that is creation of legislative councils. If you want to create, first thing that you have to know is, at the state level you have 2 houses, right? Of course not in every state. Sorry? Bicameralism. Okay, yeah. So bicameralism is nothing but having 2 houses. Okay. At the union level you have 2 houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. At state level also, in some states you will have 2 houses, in some states only 1 house. If you take Telangana, we have 2 houses. We have Legislative Assembly and Legislative Council. That is, we have both MLAs and MLCs. Okay. Now, to create this legislative council, the respective state legislative assembly can put up a proposal to Parliament that we want a state legislative council, you please approve. Okay. Now, creation of state legislative council is a type of amendment to the constitution. You are changing the constitution. Okay. Only in this case, state legislatures have the power to initiate some change to the constitution. In all the other cases, any change to the constitution can be made and initiated only by Parliament, except in one case, that is creation of state legislative councils. Okay. Now, even after state puts up a proposal to create a state legislative council, there is no obligation on the Parliament to accept it. Okay, but generally Parliament accepts it. Clear so far? Do you have any doubts? No? Can we wind up the class? Okay. Collect your Xerox papers from Sana.